back to another episode of the Moz House Podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Begun, and I'm here with with an exhibiting artist, Dominick Cocozza, who's part of our Reclamation show that's being shown at the Southampton History Museum right now. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you, Hunter, for inviting me.
Of course, I'm very glad you can make it. It's really nice to always meet artists. I would have actually gotten a chance to meet you, but a lot of the other artists in the show, I wouldn't have had a chance to talk to. So this is a great opportunity. Um, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your piece?
Yes, so hi everyone. My name is Dominick Cocozza, and I am an indigenous Guatemalan American artist based in Arlington, Virginia, and currently Providence, Third Island. I'm a senior about to graduate at Third Island School of Design, studying painting with a minor in politics and policy. And most of my work is about reclaiming my Guatemalan and indigenous identity as a transracial adoptee. So I talk a lot about identity politics and the specificity of being an indigenous Guatemalan artist.
That's awesome. So what's it like graduating? Honestly, I never graduated from college, and I'm always interested in what people feel like. Does it feel like the beginning of something new? Does it feel like more, or does it feel more like the end?
Yes, it feels like a really beautiful chapter has closed. So I'm definitely going to miss my studio space and the cohort of people that I've been able to cultivate connections with. But at the same time, I think moving forward, it's just given me more confidence. I definitely want to be a part of the art world, the variety of different art ecosystems that exist. So having RISD as my first foundation has really allowed me to get to know people not just within Providence, New York area, but also globally, the different kinds of makers and artists and designers that are out there.
Hmm. Interesting. So when I was looking at your art, I noticed you used a bunch of different materials, or not just like concrete, something
Hmm.
concrete stucco. Can
Yes.
you? What is concrete stucco?
So concrete stucco it's a paste that you can buy. Some people will make their own paste that they can then apply onto the surface of paintings. And so for a lot of my more recent paintings, I've been really interested in the surface, the actual surface of the painting. Sometimes you can't even see the surface from just a photo, but I'm really interested when people get a chance to see it in person, how the texture might feel different when they're looking at it. And when I use the concrete stucco, or sometimes I'll put sand into my paint, it feels like I'm painting on a wall. And so I like
Hmm.
that idea that it's almost a mural, or it feels more grounded. And sometimes even the way that the colors hit um, a textured surface rather than a flat surface makes the painting feel more 3D.
It's very interesting. So you have a very interesting. I don't even know what I would call it. Um, it's what you're painting.
Yeah.
What are these figures?
So these are Guatemalan rag dolls, which you can find pretty much everywhere in Guatemala, but you can also find in a lot of other indigenous cultures and cities throughout Central America. And so when I was adopted back in 2001, um, I had one of these rag dolls that was given to me, and I've basically held on to it my entire life. It was just a presence that I had in my room. I didn't really think twice about it until my sophomore year at RISD in art school, when I basically had been painting a lot of realistic figurative work, somewhat hyper realistic, but very traditional classical styles. And I was just really interested in maybe potentially diverging from that and making a whole body of work that's about these dolls, and kind of having them represent avatars of myself, and allowing me to narrate stories and provide agency for the entire topic.
Wow. So how do you even develop this ability? Like, is that? That might not make sense for as a question, but because it just looks so surreal. Like, I definitely can never make anything that looks like this. So, I guess from where you started, how did you kind of get into this art style?
Yes, so I think all I've been I started art at a very early age. My mom was definitely a champion in allowing me to take art classes. I mean, my entire family has been super supportive, but when there wasn't really a program yet for, young artists in my public school system, she really advocated for that. And that kind of, we call it gifted, but I wouldn't even say it's gifted. It was an accelerated art class that pretty much followed my way all throughout high school. So I was able to just take extracurricular classes in art. And then when I applied and I got into RISD, I was super excited. And then once I was at RISD, I decided to start making work about my Guatemalan adoptee heritage. And the one of the biggest things that stood out to me was the color and the chromatic range of Guatemala, and a lot of indigenous cultures as well. So within the past 1 or 2 years, I've really been trying to focus more on my color theory and getting my paintings to a point where they're really, really chromatic and they, embody the physicality of the dolls themselves.
Hmm, it's very cool. So, do you take part of any other art mediums?
Yes, so right now I've primarily stuck to just oil painting, but I did in the past previously do a lot of charcoal drawing, acrylic painting, watercolor. I would do colored pencil studies that even with colored pencils would make them look pretty realistic, hyper realistic. So I feel like with all of the other mediums, they've really allowed me to learn different things from them. So that way, when I come back to oil painting as my primary medium, I know how to treat oil paint as watercolor or treat it as drawing. And so I think that's definitely helped me make my oil paintings feel more rounded.
Hmm. Is there any mediums you haven't tried yet, but you would like to?
I would definitely love to try gouache. It's kind of a hybrid between acrylic and watercolor, and it's very immediate, so you kind of build layer on top of layer. There's no whole lot of mixing that, I mean, you can do mixing, but it seems like more of a layered process. And I'd also love to do tempera painting, which is more of a historical painting medium, but it's really fragile and it can get pretty pricey, but I'd love to try it in the future.
Hmm. I think we've had a gouache workshop before at Ma's
Oh,
house. Could
awesome.
be mistaken on that,
Awesome.
but I
Yeah,
think we had it once or twice.
that's awesome.
Um, so, what are some of your biggest inspirations in your own art or just people in general that inspire you?
Yes, so I would say in terms of the painters that I look up to. I look up to artists such as Kent Mockman, who does these really beautiful um, figurative paintings about representing indigenous bodies, talking a lot about colonialism and reclamation. And I love the scale and detail and expertise that he has, the control that he has with the medium. So I look up to his work a lot. There are, lesser known in terms of painting such as Guatemalan textile weavers. I look at a lot of Guatemalan textile artist books and studying kind of the medium of it. And so I would say I have like my painting influences, but then in terms of cultural and indigenous influences, I am definitely going to pretty much all of the artist talks around campus that I can go to and just kind of learning from different artists that come to the school and kind of talk about their practice.
Well, so, how did you hear about the Reclamation show?
I heard about the Reclamation show from Jeremy's Instagram. I had been following Ma's house as well, but I once I had been accepted to Ma's house, I was super excited, and I had corresponded with Jeremy in, I believe it was January, and that's kind of when we just brainstormed and decided, okay, we'll plan for a forthcoming residency in December, and obviously, right at January 2024, I didn't really know what my plans were yet. So I was really excited to have an opportunity, my first opportunity post grad school or post graduating RISD. And so just from him talking about it and through seeing it on Moz House's channels, I thought that the theme was really interesting and something that I think about a lot. So I decided to submit work.
Yeah, I think the theme of your piece, Equinox, kind of fits in directly with
Hmm.
reclamation, everything. So could you? So speaking of, wow, what a great segue. Um, piece Equinox. I really like that piece.
Thank you.
It kind of it feels very different than the other pieces in the show.
Hmm.
There's nothing else like it. The thing is, you definitely stand out, which is awesome. And could you tell us a little about the piece, some of the themes, and what it really means to you?
Yes. So a lot of my work has been about building these speculative surrealist spaces that the dolls are in, and they represent love, they represent tragedy. Because they're also dolls, they also have this uneasiness that I think is something that I definitely play with a lot in my work, that uncanniness that comes with it, in that I want I want the works to be able to stand alone in terms of their aesthetic quality, so in terms of the technical skill that's represented in them. But I'm always in the back of my head, kind of asking the question, who are the paintings for? Um, because I think that the paintings, are for a specific audience that is interested in themes like reclamation and kind of understands the experiences of marginalized experiences. So it's really about carving out space for not only my own identity and other Guatemalan adoptees throughout the U.S. and internationally, but also aspiring to problem solve in real time and just address the contextual histories that I'm thinking about.
I do want to touch on something that you mentioned, the uncanniness
Hmm.
of dolls. I've always been kind of like, I don't know if scared's the right word, but more
Yeah.
like worried about them. Like,
Hmm.
this doll over here,
Yes.
if there was a spirit in this room, this would be a pretty nice body for it to just go into.
Hmm.
I don't know what it is about them.
Yeah.
They don't sit right with me
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Have you ever ran into anything like that before?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of paranormal paranormal activity, no. But I think that the way that I try to combat that, because I want it to feel a little uneasy, but I also want it to still symbolize love, symbolize the celebration of indigenous culture. So it's kind of a fine line that I've really been trying to think about this past year, on maybe not making things so overtly humanist or doll like. Some of my paintings feel like they're more humanoids, and some of them feel like they're more dolls. So it's just kind of been a matter of, thinking about what I want from the piece, what I want the piece to say, and then address it from there.
Hmm. I definitely am not scared of the dolls in your painting.
Well, thank
Luckily,
you.
otherwise it would have been a very
Yeah.
rough show opening for me. Always checking over my
Yeah.
shoulder. So, do you have any like insight you can give us on some of your upcoming pieces that you're going to be making?
Yeah. So I've been working for an entire a while on this really large piece that I just finished. It's called Onward. I'll be posting it soon on my Instagram, and it depicts five of these dolls. It's very large scale. It's 72 inches by 66. So it's pretty tall. It's taller than me, not very tall. But it's taller than me. And it's, I would say it's like an epic. It's very epic the way that I've painted it. I've done it from an angle where the dolls almost feel like they could walk on you or on a step. So they feel like they have a lot of power. It's also the first time that I've ever painted one of the Guatemalan animal dolls, which
Hmm.
is, I'm not quite sure. It's like a horse or a llama. It's like an in between. But since growing up in Arlington, Virginia, Washington D.C. is 15 minutes away from me. So I grew up going to the National Museum of the American Indian and going and visiting all of those exhibitions and all the programming ever since I was really, really young. And so my partner and I had gone to the gift shop and she was looking at, the different things that she could buy. And we came across, an actual animal doll that I'd never seen before. And so she bought it. And then that was kind of the centerpiece of this new painting is getting to know that the anatomy of that doll in a different way.
Wow. I'd never heard of those before. But I guess they definitely
Yeah,
exist. Now
that,
I know.
they do exist.
Huh. So how did you kind of start getting into being an artist? And I guess since now you've
Hmm.
graduated or about to graduate,
Thank
congratulations,
you.
by the way. Um, when you were in high school, how did you decide to pursue this career path? Like, what was like the final decision? You're like, I'm pretty good.
Hmm. In high school, I was kind of on a different track for art. The way that my public school oriented itself was that I kind of had to choose one really like extracurricular, non traditionally academic thing to study. And for a while, I'd been doing band. I played the bassoon for a while. And
Oh
freshman
wow.
year, I couldn't do both visual art and performing arts. And so I decided to do band my freshman year. And then once I was in sophomore year, I decided to give up band and go with visual arts. And my county has a really strong and great art program, and it's public school. So that was also really great. We didn't have to pay extra for anything. And from there, I just kind of took off and I was studying under one of my close mentors, Gavin Glakis. He's a painter from the Washington, D.C. area. He'll do congressional portraits, but he does a lot of cityscapes and landscapes. And so I really learned how to really oil paint and do figure painting um, from him. And so then after I'd kind of like developed a pretty good understanding of paint and the medium, I just kind of started creating a portfolio for both college. But the year before that, I was in the AP art studio art class, the advanced placement. And so we had to submit like a separate portfolio for that goes to the college board and then they graded and everything. And my whole topic for that was US immigration, US migration. And so my whole portfolio was talking about that. And pretty much the highlight of my junior year was that I had entered this pretty wide standing competition throughout the US called the US Congressional Art Competition. And I submitted to my district, and Congressman Don Beyer picked my work because all the Congress people will choose one artist from their district to represent them in the US Capitol building. So my painting from junior year actually made it to the US Capitol building, and that was back in I think 2018. So it ended up getting a lot of press. So I got interviewed by CNN, BBC News, a couple of other um, kind of news outlets, and that kind of once I was able to do that, it basically showed me the power of art, the power of painting, and how I could use my work to make a difference.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
How old were you in 2018? Like,
I think I was 16 or 17.
geez, interviewing by CNN and
Yeah.
getting selected. That's insane. And then here I am interviewing you. Not CNN. We got Riverside FM, Moss House Podcast, Apple Podcasts, whatever.
Yeah, but this is great. I think this is really I am really appreciative of your time with this because I think, now that I'm out of art school, I actually know what my work is saying. I know what I want to do with it versus before I was making work and I think it was solid, but it wasn't it wasn't as cohesive as it is now. I think now I have a a visual language that I'm interested in, and it's really great to talk about it and hear feedback.
Oh, well, thank you for being part of the show. I do want to know, how nervous were you when CNN was interviewing you?
I I would say I was a medium nervous. Yeah,
Medium.
I was I was never the most academically inclined person in high school. So it wasn't really until junior year that I really started to develop my writing skills and, barely start developing my speaking skills. I had never really done public speaking in any capacity. And so when that opportunity came about, I was, trying to like brainstorm about what should I write down beforehand? Should I practice? But it all came pretty naturally to me, which was great. It was mostly like the aftermath of all of the press that I very much started getting, controversy, people talking about me, telling me to go back to Guatemala. Um,
What?
some like
That's
negative press,
crazy.
and it was definitely interesting because not everyone knew who I was, and so were people believed that I was a U.S. immigrant, and as an adoptee, that was just not my truth, and so it was just the first time that I really didn't have control over something, and I just really learned from that. But I learned that's really how the controversy works, and so to stay with it was really a benefit to me.
I've never really thought about it that way. That's so interesting. That you can kind of lose. That's what like the big famous people say. They're like, "Oh yeah, we always lose control of the media. They just say
Yeah.
whatever." But it could literally happen to just like anybody.
Yes, definitely. Anyone in any capacity for sure.
Yeah. The only time I ever run into, um, I guess the bad side of media is when people comment bad things in my TikTok videos. That's the only time. No one else has anything to say, anything mean besides yeah.
Yeah.
That's no one really besides people on the internet.
Yeah.
No
The internet is
newspaper people.
definitely can be a mean place for sure.
Hmm. It's very funny, but can be very mean.
Yes.
Um, but I don't know. Well, where would I be without the internet at this point? Um, I mean, you'd be fine. You got painting skills. All of my techniques are on the computer basically.
I'm sure
So I do video art.
I'm sure you would be fine as well.
Be working at Lockheed Martin or something. No, just kidding. Um, so where do you kind of see your art taking you?
So right now I'm really excited to come back to or I haven't even visited Moss House, but to partake in Moss House residency in December. I'll also be going to the Vermont Studio Center, which is a really great international residency program located in Johnson, Vermont, for the month of September. So that will be really exciting to have like two residencies so close together and really think about how I want my work, to support me in the future. I really would love in the future to continue showing my work. I know a lot of artists are really nervous about gallery representation, showing in institutional settings, and I think while although down the line I would really love to work with a gallery, I definitely enjoy the space that I'm in right now, taking my time to consider the entire art ecosystem and see where my work takes place. I think I really want my work to be in conversation with other Latin American and Indigenous artists, and I'm still kind of discovering what that looks like for me. But as outside of my work, I'd love to be a gallery assistant or work in a museum institution, working around programming and cultural programming and making the collections more inclusive. And so I see myself kind of having both a public facing role, but then also having a really vibrant art career where I'm continuing to produce work and I'm continuing to show nationally and hopefully internationally in the future.
That sounds awesome. I hope that comes true.
Thank you.
Do you have a piece of work that you're most proud of?
I really love the piece that's in the show Equinox, and I love the piece that I haven't shown yet, but all of my paintings definitely come from, a place of love, a place of learning from the dolls. I paint my partner as a doll a lot. She goes to RISD as well. She is in the architecture department, and she's a Mexican American indigenous adoptee from Oaxaca, Mexico. So we have that kind of adoption similarity in common, and we have very similar upbringings. So a lot of my work, while even in doll form, is representing both of us, and it kind of adds this other level of excitement where it feels pretty personal when I'm painting
Well, that's a really nice explanation. Hmm. Well, I think I've hit
it.
everything I wanted to ask you.
Well, thank you.
Let me just double check. Let's see. Hmm. Looks like it. Okay, so at the end of the show, though,
Okay.
I like to give all the artists an opportunity to plug all their social media, their websites, wherever people can
Yes.
contact you, and you can shout out whoever you want, any organizations. This floor is just yours to say whatever you feel like saying.
Oh, thank you. Well, you can find all of my work on my Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram. Maybe not posting, but on my stories. My Instagram is D Cocozza Studios, and it's just one continuous name, username. And then my website is www.dcocozzastudios.com. And so that is a comprehensive representation of all of my work, really beginning kind of at the end of high school. So it shows some of my more early realism paintings and master studies, and then you can see the progression into my work now, but see kind of my journey there. It also has my biography there. It has some videos that I've partaken in, and then it has a very updated, continuous updated curriculum vitae, so my artist CV. And so that is definitely the place to look in terms of upcoming shows. I'm in this show right now, but I'm also in a show that's going to be opening soon at Junior High Los Angeles, and that's exciting. That's going to be a great group show. But that'll be the place to look in terms of updates, but also social media. I'm constantly posting about where I am, different artist talks I'm visiting, other Indigenous artists that I'm meeting. So those are the places to look.
You actually reminded me of one more question I wanted to ask you. You have a pretty substantial amount of social media followers
Uh,
on Instagram. Do you have any tips for people who have smaller followings to on how to build up a little bit?
yeah, I I think sometimes social media can feel like it replaces being social in the real world, and I think to some extent it can. I'm an introvert for sure, but being an artist has also taught me, different tips to gain the confidence to be social. So I think one of the main things in terms of social media platforms is if you're showing your work, you're new to showing your work on Instagram, sometimes just showing your face. I know sometimes that's daunting for people, but if you just show your face next to your painting, or you take a picture of you next to your painting, it can really just show people that you're an also you're a person, you're learning, and people can really get to know your face. That's one of the things when I came to RISD. I actually had a completely different art platform back in 2020 when I first got to school. Unfortunately, it glitched out and it I wasn't able to keep it. But I came into RISD with 11,000 followers, and I
Oh
had
wow.
been showing my work not that long, really, for 2 or 3 years. But I had photos of my face, so when I actually got to campus, people recognized me and they knew who I was. So I definitely think developing like a recognizable recognizability for you can be really powerful, and then of course using hashtags and really just find other artists that you're interested in and comment on their Instagrams. It's never People love hearing from other people in terms of like direct messaging. So if you ever have a question about how someone's making work or you're curious about that, definitely go ahead and ask them. And that's a great way to build a connection. And then any other events that you can think of that might not even be art related, like maybe you went to a farmer's market and you saw someone's work and you want to get in contact with their Instagram, definitely follow their channels too, because that's definitely how you build the social media both in the virtual world but also in the real world too.
That's very great advice.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on the
Of course.
podcast. Um, I am excited for us to have our full length extra hour of time.
Yes, I'm very excited
Um,
about that. Yeah.
pod, yeah, it's definitely more of a conversation. Come December,
Hmm.
it's gonna be great. Um, anyone who hasn't yet, check out Equinox in the Reclamation show, which I
Yes.
believe is it's on view for a while,
Yes. 28th.
long time. Yeah, got a while for it, but come see it soon. It's a great show. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode of the Moz House
Yeah.
podcast.
Thank you.